Well, this is an open letter for Mr. Bill Shorten. It's time. Help me raise my voice. For many people, including myself, the events of the last few years have not felt real. Uncertainty and instability have become normalised expectations in our day-to-day lives. Catastrophic fires, devastating floods, and a global pandemic. And along with those crises, we also face a rapidly developing housing crisis. There aren't enough houses at any price. And for most, the prices don't match anything like what the average people can afford. People are frantically trying to find a home, and even double-income established tenants are struggling to even rent. The workforce is made of shift workers with no sick pay, no holiday pay, no job security, no future. In every state, ambulances ramp. More ambulances are provided and more ambulances ramp. The reality that many of us face now, when we and if we can get an appointment with our doctors, is that bulk billing is rapidly becoming a thing of the past. We all know the wait times should we need to sit in emergency rooms, and elective surgery, well, it can take years. We all know the risk to our health in an overstretched, broken down system. We have lost trust. Yet billions of dollars worth of housing stock was sold off across the country, leaving us with less public housing and an increasing population in the midst of a historic cost of living crisis. Incentives basically making homes deposit free don't account for stamp duty or the cost blowout in building or the time it will take to build. Many are reporting they are being told years, no longer months, to build. The aged care system is monumentally broken, and we are yet to hit our population peak in aged care. Like all of the other issues, we knew they were coming, but we failed to plan. Money won't fix our problems. Only good governance and new and innovative solutions. Not the same solutions as before, repitched and rehashed as a new idea to a worn-out, apathetic public. Hard work won't get you financial freedom anymore, and for many, the hope of ever owning your own home is a fantasy. Bedlock in hospitals is classically blamed on NDIS patients, which is code for disabled. Those who can't get service or can't find a home. With the current outlook, we are merely at the tip of that iceberg. An underqualified NDIS workforce has little appetite for the more complex cases that languish in our nursing homes and hospitals. They will be yet again discreetly allocated to rehab or old nursing home facilities. Once again, the problem is placed out of sight and out of mind. But nonetheless, they will keep coming. Seems we talk about managing a crisis, but when push comes to shove, fixing or averting the crisis has permanently escaped our ability. We have an undervalued workforce, full stop. In disability support work, we have a workforce deliberately imported because we imported unskilled, untrained migrants for a role we don't understand and too few of us wanted to do. Not enough hours at any rate of pay isn't going to cut the cheese for anyone. Sent off to ever more demanding roles, now here or there with too little advanced knowledge and never knowing if you'll even make rent. Doesn't make a stampede for this role. You can up the rate casually hourly, all you like, but until it is secure and supported employment, we will continue to have staff shortages. Despite the special visas touted to solve the staffing shortage by bringing in more unqualified, unskilled people, another opportunity to exploit. Or raising that rate per hour makes no difference if it isn't for enough hours a week and you are undervalued in your role. Employing more unskilled when being unskilled is precisely the problem will exasperate the problem itself. The NDIS is a social reform that on paper is wonderful, but in reality has fallen a bit short. For many, it has been life-changing, but many complain about the same old recurring issues. No staff, regular staff, poorly trained staff, uninsured, unregulated, and still unavailable. If you rely on care but can't guarantee your care, you don't have a life. If you can't be sure a support worker will arrive, you can't plan, can't schedule, can't work, can't get to appointments. Missed shifts are just the status quo. Low skills equate to greater hours being costed, mismanaged funds, and a lack of innovation in what remains labour intensive. For those with higher needs and complex issues, this is more often the case than not, as the numbers of qualified staff are few and they are in high demand and can choose the easier jobs. There isn't even a determination as to what qualified actually is for this role, even with corners being cut and supplying staff as cheaply as possible for the highest price possible, whilst providing a service that ideally doesn't kill you. It still isn't tenable. Providers are dropping like flies. And the failing aged care bigs are considering shoring up the holes that they have with NDIS money. Back to institutionalism pretty damn quick, especially if it's touted disability money will save aged care. So change or perish seems to be the stakes. Yet, we overlook the large community that is already caring for others. They are experienced carers, yet we deny them the dignity of employment. We overlook those with disabilities, with lived experience, and pass them over for those who know nothing about disability. Staff not trained in mental health or psychosocial and on variable rosters quite often don't turn up, and people die. Confronted with lack of appropriate housing, unemployment issues and the staffing, came up with a concept. It wasn't entirely new, and it very much came as a consequence of watching a documentary called Crip Camp. Perhaps my client's 1970s influence on music being played also assisted my mindset. As Neil Young played in the background, my mind began to turn. What if a community helped itself? What if it had a business at its core that employed people and generated an income for the community in addition to supporting the government funding? What if we could help those that had dangerous gaps in their care and left no one behind? What if we could provide crisis care instead of the hospital and stop bedlock for good? What if the support staff and the families were also a part of that community, and that community provided affordable housing and childcare, supporting single mothers? What if government housing maintenance costs were reduced because people had secure, affordable housing that they could call their own in a community that supported them? What if a business could be self-sufficient as well as financially robust? And just how would that change the business healthcare model that is currently failing across the entire world? What if the social change from the top down changed the way providers worked? What if that needs to happen for the NDIS to work? What if that's a huge missing piece? What if we acted as a community and collaborated with government rather than demanded from? We could train the staff and apprentice them through the community. We could employ people with disabilities as support staff and in the core enterprise at real wage award rates. We could provide affordable housing that would eliminate the fund manager's SDA wet dream and cater for a much wider range of people and more. People with families, people with pets, people who had choice of who cared for them and could take for granted their care would arrive on time and deliver. They could plan their lives. A novel idea. People actually freed from the burdens of day-to-day care, enabled to finally live their best lives in an inclusive, compassionate, intentional community. Consider this. What if in our modern world, with cost of living, housing, community is a part of the solution for many of us? What if intentional communities could help with aged care and disability and others vulnerable in our society? Those who are vulnerable mostly because lack of community in a family or in a neighbourhood. Think of employers who provide housing for employees, or small towns or community groups. Yet group homes are too often places of isolation and places where people don't get to choose who they live with. Many in their care packages now are being told they have to move out of long-term accommodation to a group home because they are too expensive to care for. Not allowed pets often, or choice of where they live or with whom. This is not deinstitutionalisation. Nursing homes and hospitals are not deinstitutionalisation. obsessing over care. Will it arrive? Will it be real care? And being left all day in bed all day is not deinstitutionalisation. But to have real deinstitutionalisation, we would have to break down the walls of the real institution, us, and our attitudes. So I continued to think, and as I wrangled with my own moral injury and PTSD from managing disabled clients in a medical model hospital system, it came to me. The best way to fix the issue is if they just weren't there in the first place. The answer to shortage in staffing is to change the way the role is looked upon and valued in the community. Change the way the role is performed. Remove the obstacles. Job satisfaction, job progression, and security are hardly new concepts. We hardly need a summit to state the obvious every time, do we? The NDIS is an act of social reform, pitched from the top down in isolation from industry itself, which has scrambled to find a way to provide choice when options have already been defined by cost. Our greatest threat to the modern world is moral liability. Government just isn't tenable if it caters for everyone within the bounds of the Articles of the Human Rights. We can't afford the $60 billion the NDIS is projected to cost in 2030. Plus the housing crisis, the healthcare crisis, and the cost of living, and a pandemic, and submarines, and a climate crisis. To fix anything has always apparently just required more money. Throw money at the problem and apparently that fixes it. As a giant house of cards gets larger and larger, common sense tells us there is a tipping point where we must change the structure to make it work. A story I told our fabulous Premier was about the railway's widths. Across the world, many railroads work on tracks 4 foot 8.5 inches apart. They are so because the English built many railways around the world. They were based on the jigs and tools they used for wheel spacing, which were that size because any other and the wagon wheels would break in the old wheel ruts. The wheel ruts were that width because of the width of old Roman chariots. The old Roman chariots were that width because it was the width of 2 horses' backsides. Which is why, in fact, the Space Shuttle's booster rockets made in Utah are the width of 2 horses' asses. They had to travel by rail, which determined the width. It is time to look beyond horses' asses that have determined our bureaucracies and designed our systems and reimagine a new system for a new future. The world has changed, and we want things to change. So must we. The word wellness is almost overused as we seek to gain a purpose to our lives and inclusion in a world that has segregated us for just about everything that could think of. Just as after the Second World War, human rights enjoyed a boost as people wanted more from their lives, the pandemic, if nothing else, may have succeeded in refocusing us on well-being, inclusion and purpose. Basically, as citizens, we want more bang for our buck. Scarcity has been the myth that shaped our modern financial systems and capitalist world, as we wrongly believed that the survival of the fittest would endure, when in reality, it was the survival of the kindest that would endure, according to Charles Darwin, and not the fittest. Community and compassion and strength in community has been and always will be the greatest reason for our success. It has never been more needed than it is today. Yet, despite the obvious mass savings and empowerment of community, such a concept could provide in such a revolutionary collaboration, it is possible our progressive government may not be progressive or brave enough to leave behind the systems that no longer serve the people. They may instead favour the ever-increasing cost of crisis management and band-aid measures to a system that is inevitably terminal. It is a lot like flogging a dead horse, is it not? Or perhaps a reinvigoration and patch-ups of ever larger buckets of money merely serves to create a Frankenstein in place of a living system. Recently, a man passed away in hospital. His name was Mitchell Pearce. There was no home for him, no care team or community to welcome him. He refused to eat or drink for the time he was placed in hospital, and he died of despair. There are more like him who deserve the right to choose and not to have no choice. We apparently need some 524,000 social housing homes, which will rise to 671,000 by 2032. The current plans cater to a mere 3% of that need. We have 162,500 on current housing waiting lists. In a climate of cost of living crisis, lack of private rental homes, builders collapsing extended build times. Yet in South Australia, at least, we have a transition to hospital program, which has failed several times. When we have cleared beds, Hampstead Rehab was closed due to around 400 complaints. I can understand the urgency to make beds available, with news of people passing away due to ambulance wait times and ramping. But remaining transition to homes programs at the Repat St Margaret's have recently reported also care issues. People placed in share rooms, lack of skilled staff, and extended wait periods for a home. The issues are certainly housing, but also the right skilled staff. This is currently worse than an institution, and yet an announcement of another 24-bed facility was made just recently. The same solution isn't going to solve the problem, bar a short-term reprieve in freeing up some beds. So to people watching this out there in the community, I say I need your help. I need your help to raise my voice with yours. I'm not being heard, and Bill Shorten is a very in-demand man, and I haven't been able to deliver this concept to him. I feel like a tiny hobbit banging on the huge gates of Mordor. It's not everyone's choice, and there needs to be, just as with all people, a range of choices. But this isn't about everyone. It's about those who wish to make that choice, in preference to having none and being stuck in hospital or some variation of. It's a choice for the workers, a choice for those with a disability and their families, a choice for affordable housing for them. So for those for whom it is their choice, they can choose to live in a home that no investor can take away, no landlord can price them out, a home for life in a community where care is taken for granted for all who live, work and belong there. A place where there is life beyond the care routine because of care being routine. A place where we will all have together a voice and a right to a voice to then reach out and help others lift their own. Help me to raise my voice and show your support in a like or a comment. Send me a message. I send a message to the change makers that it's time. It's time for a change. There's crisis accommodation and clinics for mental health and homelessness and domestic violence and new clinics being set up. There's a need for that for disability also. Thank you very much for your time, and please like and subscribe or follow, and please show your support.